The wind screamed through the streets of Birmingham, Alabama, sharp and bitter, clawing at the edges of a crumbling auto shop where Isaiah Jackson stood alone. It was Thanksgiving Eve, and the world outside was a frozen blur of snow flurries and gray dusk. The kind of night that made you pull your coat tighter and hurry home to the glow of a warm kitchen. But Isaiah wasn't home. He wasn't anywhere near the smell of roasted turkey or the laughter of family. Instead, he was hunched over a rickety desk in the dim, flickering light of Jackson's Auto Haven, his breath fogging in the chilled air as he stared at a mess of unpaid bills. His broad shoulders slumped under the weight of it all, his calloused hands trembling slightly, not from the cold, but from the gnawing dread that had settled deep in his gut. The numbers didn't lie. The shop, his father's dream, his lifeline, was dying, and with it, a piece of him was slipping away too. Isaiah rubbed his temples, his dark eyes tracing the red ink like it was a map to his own ruin. Business had been bleeding out for months, slow at first. Then a flood he couldn't stop. The economy was a mess, and folks in Birmingham weren't bringing their cars in unless the wheels were falling off. He'd already let go of his best mechanic, a guy who'd been with him since the early days, and the guilt still twisted in his chest like a rusted wrench. If things didn't turn around soon, he'd have to shut the doors for good. The thought hit him like a punch. Closing this place wasn't just losing a business. It was burying his father all over again, letting go of the legacy the old man had built with grease-stained hands and a stubborn heart. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, a low howl that seemed to mock him, and even the ancient heater humming in the corner couldn't chase the chill from his bones. His phone buzzed on the desk, cutting through the silence like a lifeline. He glanced at the screen. His sister, Tasha. A faint smile tugged at his lips despite everything, and he answered, forcing his voice to lift. Hey, Cierge. Her voice came through warm and soft, laced with that familiar mix of love and worry that only a little sister could pull off. Hey, big man, you still coming tomorrow? Right. The kids are bouncing off the walls about Uncle Isaiah. He leaned back in his creaking chair, the leather of his jacket squeaking against the frame, and let out a heavy sigh. Yeah, Hanum, ikinimam. I'll be there, 5 sharp. There was a pause, and he could feel her frown through the phone. You okay? You sound off, he chuckled, a dry, hollow sound. Just a long day. Wessunde takriyurnes, that's all. Tell the kids to save me some mac and cheese. She hesitated, then relented. All right. See you tomorrow. Love you. Love you too, he muttered, hanging up and running a hand down his face, the stubble rough against his palm. He wanted to be there, needed to be there, but his mind was a storm of overdue notices and what-ifs. Thanksgiving morning dawned colder still, the snow dusting the cracked pavement outside like a thin shroud. Isaiah threw himself into work, hoping the rhythm of turning wrenches would drown out the noise in his head. He tightened bolts, changed oil, checked brakes, anything to keep moving. But the truth was stark. The shop was a ghost town. The holiday slump was brutal, and this year felt like the killing blow. By 4, Hurna 30 Sirur. He was done. He locked up, grabbed his beat-up leather jacket, and stepped into the biting wind, his boots crunching on the fresh snow. He was halfway to his truck, keys jingling in his hand, when his phone rang again. Unknown number. He frowned, his breath puffing out in a white cloud as he answered. Jackson's Auto Haven. This is Isaiah. Straight over Sikton, a woman's voice burst through, frantic and tight with panic. Oh, thank God. Are you the owner? Please. So, we need help. Our car broke down on Highway 65. We've called everywhere, but no one's picking up. It's freezing, and we've got 2 kids with us. Isaiah froze, his heart thudding hard against his ribs. He glanced at his watch, 40 Shorn. He was supposed to be heading to Tasha's, to the promise of a hot meal and his niece and nephew's squealing hugs. The image flickered in his mind. Golden cornbread, steaming greens, the kids tackling him at the door. But then he heard it, a faint sob in the background, a child's voice whimpering through the static. His jaw tightened, and something deep inside him shifted. Where are you at, Hananadwandi? He asked, already turning back toward the shop. Mile marker 78, near the Montgomery exit. The woman said, her voice trembling. It just died, out of nowhere. My husband's tried everything. Isaiah exhaled sharply, the cold stinging his lungs. Hang on, I'm coming. He hung up. Dialed Tasha quick. Sister one. I'm sorry. Something's come up. Family stuck on the highway with kids. I gotta help. She sighed, but her tone softened. I knew you'd say that. Be safe. All right. Plate's still here if you make it. And make sure sinks. He said, pocketing the phone and grabbing his keys. The snow fell harder as he roared out of the lot in his truck, the wipers slapping against the windshield. His headlights sliced through the darkening sky, the road slick and treacherous beneath his tires. He gripped the wheel tight, his knuckles pale under his dark skin, every mile a battle against the storm and his own exhaustion. He'd seen too many wrecks in weather like this. Twisted metal, shattered lives, and the thought of those kids out there, scared and cold, drove him faster. 20 minutes later, he spotted them, a black SUV parked crooked on the shoulder, hazards flashing weakly against the swirling white. A man stood outside, waving a flashlight, his face etched with desperation. Isaiah pulled over, the cold hitting him like a slap as he stepped out, snow crunching under his boots. You, Isaiah, besser to ready, the man called, his voice rough with relief. Yet de worm, Isaiah replied, shaking the man's gloved hand. You, Marcus. The man nodded. Trey, that's my wife. Lenanim, Tiprintumum, in there with the kids. Car just quit, no warning. Isaiah peered into the SUV. A woman huddled inside, clutching two small figures wrapped in blankets. The kids, maybe 5 and 7, stared out at him, their wide eyes gleaming with fear in the dim light. His chest tightened. He turned back to Trey. Pop the hood. Let's see what's up. The engine was a mess, electrical system fried, battery dead in the cold. This ain't a quick fix, he said, shutting the hood with a thud. Needs a tow and some real work. Trey's shoulders sagged, and Lena's voice cracked from inside. We're headed to Atlanta. My mom, she had a heart attack. They don't know if she'll make it through the night. Her words broke on a sob, and Trey rested a hand on her shoulder, his own face crumpling. Isaiah's breath caught. He knew that pain, his own mom gone too soon. No goodbye. He clenched his fists, resolve hardening like steel. I'll get you there, he said, voice low but firm. Let's get you out of this cold first. He grabbed his toe chains, the metal biting into his gloves as he worked fast, securing the SUV to his truck. The snow stung his face, his fingers numbing, but he didn't stop. Trey and Lena watched, gratitude flickering in their tired eyes. Can't thank you enough. Mandarin so. Trey said, clapping Isaiah's shoulder as they finished. Just doing what's right, Isaiah muttered. Climbing into his truck, the drive back to the shop was tense, the SUV's weight pulling behind him, the storm raging outside. He kept glancing in the mirror, making sure they were still there, still safe. When they pulled into Jackson's Auto Haven, he backed the SUV into the garage, the heat from the old unit barely denting the chill. Trey helped Lena and the kids inside, their small feet shuffling to the waiting area, a cramped space with worn chairs and a sputtering coffee maker. Lena sank into a seat, pulling the kids close. Her face pale but grateful. She whispered, her voice thick. Isaiah nodded, avoiding her gaze. I get it, he said simply, then turned to Trey. I'll start on the car. Holler if you need anything. He dove into the work, sleeves rolled up, tools clanking against metal. The hum of the garage lights buzzed overhead as he tore into the SUV's guts, alternator shot. Wiring a mess. It wasn't just a dead battery, it was a fight. His hands moved on instinct, but his mind raced. He knew that helplessness, that dread of losing someone and being too late. He'd lived it. His mom's face flashed in his memory, her warm smile gone cold in a hospital bed. No chance to say what he'd needed to. He gritted his teeth, tightening a bolt with more force than necessary. Not this time. Not for them. Hours blurred by, his fingers aching, grease smearing his forearms. The kids fidgeted in the waiting area, Lena murmuring softly to them. Trey pacing with his phone pressed to his ear. Isaiah didn't ask questions, just worked. Finally, the engine sputtered to life, a steady rumble filling the garage. He stepped back, wiping sweat and grime from his brow, relief washing over him like a tide. Trey appeared beside him, eyes wide. All set, Isaiah nodded, grabbing a rag. She's good. Check it again in Atlanta. Just to be sure, Trey shook his head, stunned. Man, I don't know what to say. You didn't have to do this. Not on a holiday. Isaiah shrugged, his voice rough. Couldn't leave you out there. Not with kids. I know what it's like to miss a goodbye. Trey's expression softened, something unspoken passing between them. How much do I owe you? Hey, for us, turn, he asked, reaching for his wallet. Isaiah glanced at Lena, at the kids now bundled up, at the worry still etched in her face. He made a call. Just the parts. Deshuri Yisambita son. He said, no labor. Call it a Thanksgiving gift. Trey blinked. Floored, one made one in Kukin. You serious? Iferinobum, Isaiah said, shoving his hands in his pockets. Lena let out a choked sob and hugged him quick, her arms trembling. You don't know what this means, she whispered, pulling back with wet eyes. Trey handed over cash for the parts, then pressed a business card into Isaiah's hand. Take this. If you ever need anything, call me. Isaiah barely looked at it, nodding as they gathered their kids and drove off into the snowy night. Exhaustion crashed over him as he locked up, the weight of the night settling into his bones. But beneath it, a quiet satisfaction glowed. He'd done something good, something right. He had no idea that small card in his pocket was about to turn his world upside down. The next morning, Isaiah dragged himself out of bed before the sun, his body screaming from the night before. Every muscle ached, his hands stiff from hours of wrenching in the cold. But he couldn't shake the feeling that lingered, a quiet warmth, like an ember glowing in his chest. He'd made it to Tasha's late Horaceine, a Syrian at Farnington Barnes, after midnight, and she'd shoved a plate of leftovers in his hands with a knowing smile. You're too good. Sai nawai sinquan. She'd said, shaking her head. He'd just grunted, too tired to argue, and crashed on her couch with the kids' laughter still echoing in his dreams. Now, Iwinamorni, as he unlocked the shop's rusted doors, the crisp air bit at his face. The snow from last night blanketing the lot in a thin, glittering sheet. He shrugged off his jacket, the heater groaning to life, and got to work counting inventory, sorting invoices, anything to keep his mind off the inevitable. The bills weren't going anywhere. The bank's final notice sat heavy in his drawer, a ticking clock he couldn't outrun. He was elbow deep in a stack of receipts when his fingers brushed something sharp-edged in his pocket. Frowning, he pulled it out, the business card Trey had given him. He'd forgotten about it in the haze of exhaustion. He flipped it over, squinting at the text in the dim light, and his breath hitched. Trey Coleman, CO, Coleman Automotive Solutions. The logo, a sleek, silver gear, stared back at him, familiar in a way that made his stomach drop. Coleman wasn't some small-time outfit. It was a titan, a nationwide supplier of auto parts. The kind of name stamped on half the boxes in his shop. Isaiah let out a low whistle, leaning back against the workbench, the card trembling slightly in his hand. He'd spent hours fixing the car of a man who could buy his shop 10 times over, and he hadn't even known it. A laugh bubbled up, rough and disbelieving. He shook his head, tucking the card back in his pocket. Didn't matter. He'd done what he did because it was right, not for a payout. Still, the weight of it stuck with him, a flicker of something he couldn't name. The day crawled by, slow and uneventful. The phone stayed silent, the lot empty save for a stray cat darting through the snow. Isaiah tried to focus, tried to ignore the numbers glaring at him from the ledger, but the pressure was a vice around his chest. He was drowning, and no amount of grit could pull him out. By the end of the week, the reality was suffocating. The bank wanted payment by month's end, or Jackson's Auto Haven was done. He sat in his office late one night, the heater's hum the only sound, staring at the framed photo of his dad on the wall. The old man's grin, wide and proud, cut deeper than the cold ever could. I tried. Pop, he muttered, voice cracking. I really tried. Then, as Surinarnman, on a frigid December morning, everything shifted. Isaiah was under an old Ford, swapping out a leaky oil pan. When gravel crunched outside, he slid out, wiping his hands on a rag, expecting another desperate customer with a clunker on its last legs. Instead, a black Mercedes rolled into the lot, its glossy finish gleaming against the winter muck. Behind it, a second car, another luxury ride, pulled up, Sleek and out of place in his rundown corner of Birmingham, Isaiah straightened, his brow furrowing, a prickle of unease crawling up his spine. This wasn't his usual crowd. The Mercedes door swung open, and out stepped Trey Coleman, not the frazzled, road-weary man from the highway, but a sharp figure in a tailored suit, exuding power with every step. Isaiah tossed the rag aside, wiping his hands on his jeans as Trey approached, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Morning." "Isaiah," Trey said, his handshake firm and warm. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon." Isaiah raised an eyebrow, glancing at the second car where two men in crisp suits climbed out, briefcases in hand. "Gotta say, I'm surprised to worry, say Manon," he admitted, his voice steady despite the knot in his gut. "Car holding up all right." Trey chuckled, the sound rich and easy. "Car's perfect, thanks to you. But that's not why I'm here." He scanned the shop, the peeling paint, the rusted lifts, the scars of a place fighting to survive. "I looked into you after that night, asked around. You've got a reputation. Isaiah, a free wash set of barrigas. People trust you, say you're honest, that you don't screw folks over, even when it costs you." Isaiah shifted, heat creeping up his neck. "Just doing my job," he muttered, crossing his arms. Trey's smile widened. "That's exactly what I'm after." He gestured to the suits, who stepped forward. "All business. I'm expanding Coleman Automotive, building a chain of certified service centers, places people can count on for fair work. No bullshit, no upselling, no hidden fees, just real mechanics who know their stuff. And I want this shop, your shop, to be the first." Isaiah blinked, the words slamming into him like a misfired piston. "You want my shop?" he repeated, voice tight. Trey shook his head. "Not just the shop. You want a foreign. This place has something money can't buy. Trust. Your name carries weight here. I'm not taking it from you. I'm investing in it." Isaiah's mind reeled. "And what's that look like?" he asked, skepticism sharpening his tone. Trey's eyes gleamed. "Full funding, renovations, new gear, derriere, more staff. Whatever you need to make this place thrive. You stay the owner. Run it your way. Only difference. You've got Coleman behind you. No more scraping by." Isaiah stared at him, the air thick with the weight of it. His shop, his dad's shop, saved. Just like that. It sounded too good. Too clean. "What's the catch?" he said finally, his voice low. Trey met his gaze, steady and serious. "No catch. One condition. You keep running it like you did that night. Keep treating people right. That's it, this someone." Isaiah's breath came slow, his thoughts a tangle of hope and doubt. He thought of his dad, of the years poured into this place, of the sleepless nights wondering if it'd all slip away. Then he thought of what it could mean. Jobs for the neighborhood, help for folks who couldn't afford it, a chance to build something lasting. His jaw tightened, and he extended his hand. "All right, to winners, let's do it." Trey's grin broke wide as he shook it, firm and final. "You won't regret this." The suit stepped up with paperwork, and Isaiah took one last look around. The worn benches, the flickering lights, the ghosts of 1,000 repairs. In a few months, it'd be unrecognizable, bigger than he'd ever dreamed. He'd spent years wondering if hard work and decency paid off. Now, we at 1 years, standing there, shaking hands with a man who could have driven past him in the snow. He had his answer. It started with a choice, a cold night, a stranded family, a gut call to do right. And it was only the beginning. The weeks that followed were a blur of chaos and change. Trey wasn't kidding about moving fast. The day after the deal was signed, a crew rolled in, contractors with clipboards, architects sketching plans, delivery trucks unloading gear Isaiah had only seen in catalogs. New lifts gleamed under the garage lights. Diagnostic machines hummed with precision. And the waiting area got a facelift, fresh paint, cushioned chairs, a coffee maker that didn't sound like it was dying. At first, it was too much. Isaiah stood in the middle of it all, grease still under his nails, watching strangers rip out the old and haul in the new. He'd built this place piece by piece, every dented toolbox, every scuffed floorboard earned through sweat and sacrifice. Now it was transforming overnight, and a part of him ached, like he was losing something sacred. But then he saw the bigger picture. He hired back his old mechanic, Jamal, who walked in grinning like he'd won the lottery. Couldn't believe it when you called. Menasa weren't unsure. Jamal said, clapping Isaiah's shoulder. Thought you were done for. Isaiah smirked, handing him a wrench. Not yet. He brought on two more, a young kid fresh out of trade school and a woman who'd been fixing cars since she was a teenager. For the first time in years, the shop buzzed with life, not just survival. The grand opening was set for spring, and word spread fast. Old customers poked their heads in, marveling at the changes, slapping Isaiah on the back like he'd hit the big time. You deserve this. Zayi, they'd say, and he'd shrug, uncomfortable with the praise. To him, it wasn't luck or some cosmic reward. It was proof that doing right, even when it hurt, could build something real. One evening, as the crew finished installing a new sign, Jackson's Auto Haven, a Coleman partner, the front bell chimed. Isaiah looked up from a stack of invoices, expecting a worker with a question. Instead, Lena Coleman stood there, her kids trailing behind her, their small faces bright with curiosity. She wasn't the frantic woman from the highway anymore. Her shoulders were relaxed, her smile soft and genuine. Hope we're not interrupting. Shawani Tamrini, she said, stepping inside. Isaiah waved her in, setting his papers down. Not at all. Good to see you. The kids darted forward, and the little boy, maybe 5 now, dug into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled drawing. He thrust it at Isaiah, shy but proud. I made this for you. Isaiah unfolded it carefully, a crayon sketch of a boxy truck. A stick figure, him standing beside it, a big grin on his face. Scrawled above it in wobbly letters, Mr. Isaiah, best fixer. A grin split his face, warmth flooding his chest. This is perfect. Little man, Shuri Ranatornainowanas, he said, crouching to the kid's level. Nailed the truck and everything. Lena laughed, a light sound that filled the room. He's been talking about you nonstop since that night. Both of them have hammerwarfs that Gurhamanon. Her voice softened, her eyes locking on his. I wanted to thank you again, properly. We made it to Atlanta that night. My mom, she held on just long enough for us to say goodbye. She passed the next day. But we got that moment because of you. Isaiah's throat tightened, a lump he couldn't swallow. I'm glad you made it, he said, voice rough. Really? Lena nodded, glancing around the shop. Trey told me what he's doing here, said it started with you. You didn't just fix our car. Isaiah, you changed everything for us. He shook his head, deflecting, just did what felt right. She smiled, a knowing glint in her eye. No. You did what a good man does. He didn't have a comeback for that, so he just nodded, looking down at the drawing. After they left, he pinned it to his office wall, right next to his dad's photo. It was simple, crayons and paper, but it hit harder than any paycheck ever could. The grand opening came fast, the shop gleaming under a rare spring sun. A crowd gathered, neighbors, customers. Even a few reporters Trey had roped in. The new sign shone above the entrance, modern but rooted in the past. Trey flew in for it, introducing Isaiah to industry bigwigs at a fancy dinner in Atlanta the night before. This is Isaiah Jackson, he'd say, clapping his shoulder. The guy who showed me what service really means. Isaiah stood there in his best jacket, feeling out of place among the suits. But Trey treated him like an equal, not a charity case. Back at the shop, though, on Mir Wadugdum, he stayed the same, hands dirty, greeting folks by name, jumping under hoods when the team needed him. The only difference was the weight off his shoulders, the freedom to focus on the work, not the bills. Every Thanksgiving after that, Jackson's Auto Haven opened its doors, not for profit, but for people like Trey and Lena, stranded drivers, desperate families, anyone the road had left behind. They found help there. The staff volunteered, caught up in the spirit of it, and Isaiah made sure every soul who walked in left with more than a fixed car, a hot meal, a coffee, a reminder that someone gave a damn. 3 years later, on another snowy Thanksgiving, he was under the lights again, fixing a sedan that had limped into the lot. The driver, a father with 2 kids in the back, paced nearby, his face tight with worry. We're trying to get to my wife's mom, he said, voice shaking. She's in the hospital. Don't know if she'll make it. Isaiah nodded, déjà vu prickling his skin. We'll get you there, he promised, diving into the engine. Hours later, the car purred to life. Hurry. She's good, Isaiah said, wiping his hands. No charge, just go. The man stared, disbelief melting into gratitude. Thank you, he choked out, shaking Isaiah's hand like it was a lifeline. As they drove off, Isaiah pulled Trey's old card from his wallet, its edges worn soft. He smiled, shaking his head at the symmetry of it all. Then he felt eyes on him. Trey stood by the door, hands in his pockets, a quiet grin on his face. You didn't even hesitate, he said. Isaiah shrugged. Didn't think about it. Trey nodded, looking around at the shop, bustling, alive. Up on it, a beacon. Ever wonder what had happened if you hadn't picked up that call? Isaiah exhaled. The memory sharp. All the time. Trey smirked. And not the... Isaiah met his gaze, the warmth of it all wrapping around him. Wouldn't change a damn thing. They stood there, side by side. As the night hummed around them, cars fixed. Lives touched. A legacy born from one cold, selfless night. And Isaiah knew, deep down, this was just the start. The years that followed were a whirlwind, a slow burn turning into a blaze Isaiah could hardly keep up with. Jackson's Auto Haven wasn't just a shop anymore. It was a cornerstone, a name whispered with pride across Birmingham and beyond. The partnership with Coleman Automotive Solutions had lit a fuse. And what started as a lifeline for a struggling mechanic exploded into something bigger than Isaiah had ever dared dream. The flagship location gleamed under new paint and bright lights, its bays packed with cars and its staff doubled, then tripled. Word of mouth spread like wildfire. Folks came from miles around, drawn by the promise of honest work at fair prices, a rarity in a world of overpriced dealerships and shady mechanics. Isaiah's name became a badge of trust, etched into every handshake, every repair slip, every grateful nod from a customer driving away with a car that ran like new. But it wasn't the shiny new lifts or the steady cash flow that kept him going. It was the people, the single mom who rolled in with a rattling minivan, tears in her eyes because she couldn't afford the fix. Isaiah waved off the bill, slipping her kids a couple of candy bars from the stash he kept behind the counter. The old man who'd been bringing his beat-up Chevy to the shop since Isaiah's dad ran it, his hands shaky but his stories sharp. Isaiah listened, fixed the truck, and sent him off with a coffee on the house. The young mechanics he hired, wide-eyed and hungry for a chance, he taught them the trade. Not just the nuts and bolts, but the heart of it. The way his father had taught him. It's not about the money. He'd tell them, voice firm, it's about doing right by folks. That's what lasts, they nodded, soaking it in. And he saw his dad's shadow in their eager faces. Trey Coleman didn't just fund the shop, he fueled its soul. He'd show up unannounced, sometimes in a suit, sometimes in jeans, always with that easy grin and a knack for cutting through the bullshit. You're building something real here, Isaiah Nasoriuarsi, he'd say, leaning against a workbench as the garage hummed around them. Not just a business, a legacy, Isaiah would shrug, uncomfortable with the weight of the word, but it stuck. Trey pushed him to dream bigger, and together they launched a foundation, Haven Hands, to train underprivileged kids in auto repair. Isaiah poured his heart into it, teaching classes after hours, his hands guiding shaky fingers around a wrench. Trey matched every dollar Isaiah put in, turning a scrappy local idea into a statewide program. Hundreds of teens, kids who'd been written off by the system, walked out with skills. Jobser Servicernin Kusharnton, futures, Isaiah saw himself in them. The boy who'd grown up tinkering in his dad's garage. And every graduation ceremony left him blinking back tears he'd never admit to. The shop's Thanksgiving tradition grew too, a ritual carved into its bones. Every year, the doors stayed open, not for profit, but for emergencies. Snow or rain, night or day. If you were stranded, Jackson's Auto Haven was there. The staff volunteered without hesitation. Caught up in the quiet magic of it, Jamal cracking jokes over a steaming coffee pot. The newbies hauling tires with a grin, Tasha dropping by with trays of cornbread and greens for the crew, and anyone who stumbled in. Isaiah worked the bays himself, sleeves rolled up, grease streaking his arms, a steady calm in his movements. Stranded travelers left with fixed cars and full stomachs, their gratitude hanging thick in the air. You're a godsend, they'd say, and he'd just nod, deflecting, just passing it on. 5 years after that snowy night with Trey and Lena, the shop was unrecognizable, expanded bays, a training wing for the foundation, a waiting area that felt more like a living room than a pit stop. But Isaiah stayed the same. He still greeted customers by name, still knew their stories, still jumped under a hood when the team was slammed. The corporate backing hadn't softened him, it sharpened him, gave him room to be the man he'd always been. Coleman Automotive rolled out more service centers, dozens across the South, then the Midwest. But Jackson's remained the heart, the blueprint. Trey called it the gold standard, and industry folks started showing up, suits with clipboards, studying how Isaiah ran things. He'd laugh it off, wiping his hands on a rag. Ain't no secret, just treat people like people. It was during one of those hectic Thanksgivings, 5 years in, that the past came knocking again. The sun had dipped low, painting the sky a bruised purple, when a pickup limped into the lot, its engine coughing like a dying man. Isaiah was under a sedan, tightening a fuel line. When he heard the crunch of tires, he slid out, squinting into the dusk, and saw a man climb out, tall, marry, his face drawn tight with worry. 2 kids spilled from the back, a girl clutching a stuffed rabbit, a boy kicking at the snow. The man's eyes darted around, landing on Isaiah as he approached, rag in hand. "You open?" the man asked, voice ragged. Isaiah nodded. "Always are today." "What's the trouble?" The man ran a hand through his hair, his breath shaky. "Truck died a mile back. Barely got it here. We're trying to get to Huntsville. My sister's in the hospital. Docs say it's bad." Isaiah's gut twisted, the echo of Trey's desperation ringing in his ears. He glanced at the kids, the girl's lip trembling, the boy's bravado crumbling, and felt that old resolve flare up. "Let's take a look," he said, already moving toward the truck. The man, Darren. He introduced himself, hovered nearby, hands stuffed in his pockets, tension radiating off him like heat. Isaiah popped the hood. The problem clear in seconds. A busted alternator. The kind of failure that'd leave you dead on the road. "Gonna take a couple hours," he said, our one-on-one, meeting Darren's gaze. "But I'll get you there. The radiator warms harm. Bring the kids inside, it's warm." Darren nodded, relief flickering in his eyes, and ushered the kids to the waiting area where Jamal was already pouring cocoa. Isaiah dove in, the work of familiar dance, tools clinking, bolts turning, the engine's guts spilling open under his hands. The storm outside picked up, wind howling against the garage doors. But inside, the shop was a bubble of light and noise. Darren paced, checking his phone, his muttered prayers barely audible over the hum of the heater. The kids settled in, the girl coloring on a stack of paper Isaiah kept for days like this. The boy watching Jamal tinker with a spare tire. Hours ticked by, sweat beading on Isaiah's brow despite the cold seeping through the walls. Finally, the truck roared to life, his steady growl that cut through the night. He stepped back, wiping his hands, a tired grin tugging at his lips. "She's good," he told Darren, tossing the rag aside. "Should make it to Huntsville, no problem." Darren's shoulders slumped, the weight lifting as he shook Isaiah's hand, gripping it hard. Where my name? I can't thank you enough. What do I owe you?" Isaiah glanced at the kids, now giggling over their cocoa, and made the call he always did. "No charge. Just get to your sister." Darren's jaw dropped, his voice cracking. "You're kidding. You just spent all night on this." Isaiah shrugged, a faint smile breaking through. "Thanksgiving gift. Safe travels." Darren stared, then pulled him into a quick, fierce hug, his voice thick. "I won't forget this. Ever." The kids waved as they piled into the truck, and Isaiah watched them disappear into the snow, a quiet satisfaction settling over him like a blanket. He turned to head inside, the cold biting at his knuckles, when a shadow caught his eye. Trey stood by the garage door, arms crossed, that same knowing grin on his face. "Caught you at it again," he said, stepping forward. Isaiah chuckled, shaking his head. "Didn't see you sneak in." Trey nodded toward the empty lot. "Same thing you did for me. 5 years ago. Same heart." Isaiah rubbed the back of his neck, deflecting. "Just how it goes." Trey's grin softened, his eyes sharp. "No, not sure you. It's how you go. That's why this works, why all of it works." He gestured to the shop, the foundation, the life pulsing around them. "You ever stop to think where you'd be if you hadn't answered that call?" Isaiah paused, the question sinking deep. He saw it all, the struggling shop, the bills, the night he'd almost walked away. Then the flip side, Mardiawari, Kanadi Dei Warmin, the bustling bays, the kids with futures, Shirmentarana Shirion, and Amwantishunarwasawan. The families he'd pulled off the roadside, He pulled Trey's worn card from his wallet, tracing its edges with his thumb. Think about it every damn day, he admitted, voice low. Trey clapped his shoulder, firm and steady, and Isaiah met his gaze, the warmth of the shop wrapping around him like an old friend. Wouldn't trade it for nothing, Trey laughed, a sound that echoed through the garage. Come on, then mazin money, Mum. I hear you've got a spread inside. Let's eat. They walked back in together, the smell of Tasha's cornbread drifting out, the crew's chatter filling the air. Isaiah glanced at the drawing on his wall, the boy's crayon truck, his dad's photo beside it, and felt the pieces click. 5 years ago, he'd made a choice. Kusawan Kantiki Showan. A split-second gut call in the snow. Equity Remos, standing in the heart of everything it had built. He knew it wasn't just a shop. It was a promise he'd keep fixing. Keep helping, keep doing right, no matter how big it got. And as the night stretched on, the storm raging outside, Jackson's Auto Haven stood firm, a light in the dark, a haven for anyone who needed it. The years kept rolling, and Jackson's Auto Haven grew roots that stretched far beyond Birmingham city limits. By the 7th year, it wasn't just a shop, it was a movement. Coleman Automotive had spun out over 50 service centers nationwide, each one modeled after Isaiah's blueprint of grit, honesty, and heart. Industry magazines slapped his face on their covers, calling him the mechanic who changed the game, but Isaiah hated the spotlight. He'd toss the glossy pages in a drawer, muttering about how the real story was in the grease under his nails, not some airbrushed photo. Still, the attention brought business, big business, fleets of delivery trucks, city contracts, even a deal with a minor league baseball team to keep their buses running. The shop's lot was a constant churn of engines and voices, a symphony of clanking tools and rumbling motors that never seemed to quiet. Isaiah thrived in the chaos, but it wasn't easy. The bigger the operation got, the more he felt the pull of his old life, the simplicity of a one-man garage, where every job was personal, every customer a neighbor. Now, he spent half his days in meetings, juggling payroll and suppliers, while the other half was under hoods, refusing to let the desk chain him. His hands stayed rough, his jeans stained, but his eyes carried a weariness that hadn't been there before. The foundation, Haven Hands, was booming too, with chapters in 5 states, training kids from Atlanta to Memphis. He'd visit the classes when he could, watching teens who reminded him of his younger self tighten their first bolts, their faces lighting up with pride. It was worth every sleepless night, every missed meal, but the weight of it all pressed harder each year. Tasha noticed it first, cornering him one Sunday over a plate of fried chicken. "You're running yourself ragged." "Zay," she said, her voice sharp with worry. "You can't save everybody." He'd smirked, deflecting, "Ain't trying to, just fixing what I can." But her words stuck, a splinter he couldn't pull out. Thanksgiving remained sacred, a tether to the night that started it all. The tradition had grown into a quiet legend. Folks across Alabama knew if you broke down on the holiday, Jackson's was the place to limp to. The staff embraced it, turning the shop into a makeshift haven. Folding tables groaning with food, heaters blasting, kids running wild while parents swapped stories. Isaiah was always there, sleeves up, a steady rock in the storm. 7 years in, the snow hit hard again, a blizzard that turned the highways into icy traps. The shop was packed by noon, stranded truckers, families in minivans, a college kid whose junker had gasped its last breath. Isaiah moved like a man possessed, barking orders to his crew, diving into engines with a focus that drowned out the ache in his bones. The waiting area buzzed with chatter, the smell of turkey and sweet potato pie mingling with motor oil. Tasha showed up with her kids, dropping off a spread and hugging him tight. "Don't work yourself to death." "All right," she teased, but her eyes were serious. He nodded, too tired to argue, and went back to the bays. Late that night, as the crowd thinned, a battered sedan rolled in, its headlights dim against the swirling white. Isaiah was wiping down a workbench, his breath fogging in the cold seeping through the doors, when he saw the driver stumble out, a woman, mid-30s, her coat too thin for the weather. A teenage girl climbed from the passenger seat, arms crossed, her face a mix of fear and defiance. The woman, Renee, she said, approached, her voice trembling. "Please, bring us to we need help. Car's been acting up all day. Barely made it here." We're trying to get to my brother in Mobile. He's, he's not doing good. Isaiah's chest tightened, the familiar echo of desperation hitting him square. He glanced at the girl, her jaw tight, eyes red like she'd been crying. All right, he said, voice steady despite the exhaustion clawing at him. Let's see what's wrong. Get inside, it's warm. He popped the hood, the problem glaring. A cracked radiator hose, leaking fluid into the snow. Simple fix, but it'd take time. Renee's shaky hands and haunted look told him she didn't feel she had. He sent her and the girl, Kayla, to the waiting area, where Jamal handed them blankets and cocoa. Isaiah worked fast, his fingers numb but sure, the storm howling outside like it wanted to swallow them all. Renee paced nearby, her voice low as she muttered into her phone, snippets drifting over. He's fading. Don't know if we'll make it. Kayla sat stone still, staring at the floor, her silence louder than any scream. Isaiah's mind flashed to Lena, to Darren, in Muadiawan, to every face he'd pulled from the roadside. He tightened the new hose, his jaw clenched. Not this time. Not again. The repair was done in an hour, the sedan purring under his test. He waved Renee over, wiping his hands. She's solid now. Should get you to Mobile fine. Renee's eyes welled up, her voice breaking. One girl, thank you. How much? Isaiah shook his head. The words automatic. No charge. Just go see your brother. She froze, then lunged forward, hugging him tight, her sobs muffled against his jacket. You're an angel, she whispered. Kayla stepped up, her voice small. Thanks, Mr. Weninon Watton. He nodded, throat tight, and watched them drive off, their taillights fading into the whiteout. The shop felt emptier after they left, the quiet pressing in, and Isaiah sank onto a stool, exhaustion crashing over him like a wave. His hands shook, not from the cold, but from the toll of it all. Trey appeared then, slipping in from the shadows, his presence a steady anchor. He'd been there all day, helping where he could, but Isaiah hadn't noticed until now. You look beat, Trey said, leaning against the wall, his tone light but his eyes sharp. Isaiah rubbed his face, a tired laugh escaping. Feel it too. Trey nodded toward the empty lot. Another one saved. You're a machine. Masakini no more. Sunim. Isaiah shrugged, staring at his hands. Just doing what I do. Trey's grin faded, his voice dropping. Yeah, but how long you gonna keep running on fumes? You're giving everything. Isaiah, Sir Denim. What's left for you? The question hit like a brick. And for once, Okursa Serenamanus, she. Isaiah didn't have an answer. He thought of Tasha's warnings, of the nights he'd collapsed on his couch still in his boots, of the dreams where his dad's voice told him to rest. He pulled Trey's card from his wallet, faded now, a relic, and turned it over in his fingers. Didn't plan on this, he admitted, voice raw, just wanted to keep the shop going. Now it's all this. Trey stepped closer, his gaze steady. You built something bigger than you? Man, dermis bimin. But it don't work if you burn out. You gotta let it carry you too. Isaiah looked up, the weight of 7 years in his eyes, every fix, every life, every choice. How? He for him. Ian Towerman, he asked, quieter than he meant. Trey clapped his shoulder, firm and warm. Start by going home tonight. See, screw sleep. We've got this. Isaiah hesitated, the idea foreign, almost wrong, but the ache in his bones, the blur in his vision. One out, he nodded, slow and reluctant. All right, just tonight. Trey grinned, steering him toward the door. Good one, Tamadimwan. And tomorrow, we talk about hiring a manager. You're not a one-man show anymore? Isaiah smirked, too tired to argue, and stepped into the storm, the cold slapping him awake. He glanced back at the shop, lights glowing, crew still moving, a heartbeat he'd given life to. For the first time in years, he let it breathe without him, climbing into his truck and driving home through the snow. The next morning, he woke to sunlight streaming through his blinds, the first full night's sleep he'd had in months. His phone buzzed, Tasha, checking in. You alive? She teased. Barely, he shot back. But there was a lightness in his voice she hadn't heard in a while. He got to the shop late, the lot already humming, and found Trey waiting with a stack of resumes. Manager candidates, Trey said, tossing them on the desk. Pick one. You're delegating now. Isaiah groaned, but the relief was there, creeping in slow. He hired a guy named Carlos, sharp, steady, a mechanic with a head for numbers, and within weeks, the load eased. Isaiah still worked the bays, still taught the kids, but the crushing pressure lifted, leaving room for something he'd forgotten, himself. A year later, on the 8th Thanksgiving, the shop was packed again, the tradition stronger than ever. Isaiah moved through it all, fixing, laughing, passing out plates, with a steadiness he hadn't felt in years. Renee and Kayla showed up, unexpected, their sedan purring smooth. Wanted to say thanks again, Renee said, her smile bright. My brother made it. He's doing better now. Kayla handed him another drawing, a truck. Him, a big heart scrawled in red. Isaiah pinned it next to the others. His office wall, a gallery of crayon gratitude. Trey watched from the sidelines, raising a coffee cup in a quiet toast. Told you, he said, it carries you. Isaiah nodded, the truth settling deep. 8 years ago, he'd answered a call in the snow. Standing in the heart of his empire, a haven built on kindness. He knew it'd carry him, and countless others. For years to come, the 9th year hit like a freight train, testing everything Isaiah had built. Jackson's Auto Haven was a titan now, a name etched in steel across the southeast, with whispers of going national. The shop had doubled in size again, new bays, a second story for the Haven Hands Foundation, a lot that sprawled like a small campus. Coleman Automotive leaned hard on Isaiah's model, rolling out centers from Texas to the Carolinas, each one stamped with his ethos, fair work, real care. No shortcuts. The money flowed steady, enough to clear the last of his old debts and set up college funds for Tasha's kids. But success came with shadows, and Isaiah felt them creeping closer every day. The bigger the light, the darker the edges. And he wasn't ready for how fast they'd close in. It started small, a competitor, a chain called Apex Repairs, popping up across town. They undercut prices, slung ads full of slick promises, and didn't care who they burned. Isaiah shrugged it off at first. Let him try. He'd told Trey over coffee, his voice calm, but his eyes hard. Folks know the difference. But Apex wasn't playing fair. Rumors trickled in, customers saying they'd been overcharged at Jackson's. Mechanics claiming Isaiah skimped on parts. Lies. Wow, all of it, but mud sticks when you sling enough. Online reviews tanked overnight. Bots flooding forums with venom. Overpriced. Shoddy. Crook. Isaiah stared at his phone one night, the screen glowing with hate, his stomach twisting. He'd spent a decade building trust, and now it was crumbling under cheap shots he couldn't trace. Trey dug into it, his jaw tight when he called. It's Apex. They're paying to smear you. Hired some PR shark to trash your name. Isaiah paced the shop, the hum of the bays drowned by the pulse in his ears. Why me? He growled. Trey's voice was grim. You're the gold standard. They take you down. They climb over your bones. Isaiah slammed a fist on the workbench. Material tools rattling. I ain't built this for some punk chain to tear apart. Trey paused, then said, we fight back. Legal, public, whatever it takes. You're not alone in this. Isaiah nodded, but the fire in his gut burned hotter than reason. This wasn't just business, it was personal. A knife aimed at his dad's legacy, at every kid he'd pulled up, every family he'd saved. The fight hit harder than he expected. Apex sued first, claiming trademark infringement on some bullshit technicality about the word haven. Isaiah's lawyers, Coleman's best, countered, but the legal fees piled up, draining funds he'd earmarked for the foundation. Customers hesitated, spooked by the noise. And the shop's hum slowed to a murmur. The staff felt it too. Jamal's jokes went quiet. Carlos's steady hand faltered. Isaiah pushed through, working double shifts, teaching classes, keeping the doors open, but the strain carved lines into his face. Tasha saw it, dragging him to her porch one night with a beer and a glare. You're killing yourself again. Saraki, this ain't worth it. He stared at the bottle, voice low. Ain't about me. It's about them, the kids, the crew. Everybody counting on this. She softened, but her eyes stayed sharp. You can't carry it all. Thanksgiving loomed, and the storm brewing wasn't just snow. The 9th annual open house was days away when Apex dropped a bomb, a smear campaign timed to hit when the shop was most vulnerable. Billboards went up. Trust Apex, not frauds. Local news ran a hit piece. Some slick reporter twisting Isaiah's story into a rags to riches con. From hero to hustler, they called him, and the words burned like acid. The shop's lot sat half empty that morning, the silence louder than any engine. Isaiah stood outside, staring at the new sign, Jackson's Auto Haven. A Coleman partner, his fists clenched, breath fogging in the cold. Trey rolled in, his Mercedes cutting through the gray, and stepped out, face grim. They're trying to bury you before the holiday. Starve you out. Isaiah's voice was steel. They don't know who they're messing with. He rallied the crew, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. We don't fold. Not today. Not ever. We're just the people need us. And we're here. So let's show them what we're made of. The staff nodded, fire sparking in their eyes, and the shop roared back to life. Thanksgiving hit with a vengeance, snow thick, roads deadly, and the stranded poured in. A trucker with a blown tire, a mom with a smoking engine, an old couple whose heater died. They came, and Isaiah's team met them head on. He worked the bays, sweat mixing with grease, his hands a blur. Tasha brought food, the kids trailing her, and the waiting area filled with warmth, plates stacked, laughter cutting through the tension. The news vans showed up too, sniffing for a story. But what they found wasn't a fraud. They found a lifeline, mechanics hauling parts, volunteers feeding strangers, Isaiah pulling a toddler onto his shoulder while he tightened a bolt. The cameras rolled, and the narrative flipped. Renee and Kayla came back that night, their sedan humming smooth. Heard about the mess, Renee said, her smile fierce. Wanted to help. She handed out flyers, support Jackson's. Real care. Real people, and Kayla joined the kids. Passing out cocoa, word spread, and by midnight, the lot was packed again. Locals showing up just to stand with him. A guy in a beat-up Honda shook Isaiah's hand, voice thick. Apex tried to scam me last month. You fixed my car for free 2 years ago. I ain't forgetting that. Isaiah nodded, the knot in his chest loosening. The tide was turning, slow but sure. Trey worked the legal angle, nailing Apex with a defamation suit backed by hard proof, emails, payments, the whole dirty trail. The case broke wide open in spring. Apex's lies unraveling on live TV. Their CEO, a smug suit named Hargrove, crumpled under cross-examination, and the judge hit them with a fine that made headlines. Jackson's reputation snapped back, stronger than ever, and Apex's stores started shuttering within months. Isaiah watched it unfold from his office. Trey at his side, a rare grin breaking through. Told you we'd bury him, Trey said. Isaiah leaned back, exhaustion and triumph warring in his bones. Yeah, but damn, that was close. The 10th year dawned quieter, the scars of the fight fading into the shop's legend. Business boomed again. The foundation tripled its reach, and Isaiah finally let Carlos take more reins. Carving out time to breathe, he bought a small cabin an hour out, a retreat where he'd sit by the fire, the silence a balm after years of noise. Tasha dragged him there one weekend, her kids tackling him into the snow, and he laughed, real, deep. The kind he hadn't felt since he was a kid himself. You're still you, Saikidyawan, Shiriyuan, she said, watching him wrestle them. Don't lose that. He nodded. The weight lighter now. When you went over Sorotsinam, the legacy secure. The 10th Thanksgiving was a triumph. The shop glowed under fresh snow, packed with faces old and new. Renee and Kayla were there. Darren too. Even the trucker from year 9, all part of the patchwork family Isaiah had stitched together. The crew worked seamless. The foundation kids pitched in, and Tasha's spread rivaled a feast. Isaiah moved through it, a quiet anchor fixing, feeding, listening. A new stranded driver rolled in late, a young dad with a toddler, his car dead on the highway. Heard you help, folks, he said, voice shaky. Isaiah smiled, rolling up his sleeves. Yeah, Nastuna. We do. Let's get you fixed. As the night wound down, Trey pulled him aside, a gleam in his eye. 10 years, Manri or Maywam. From one cold night to this, he gestured to the chaos, kids laughing, engines humming. A community alive. This wouldn't be here without you. Isaiah looked out, the drawing wall in his office flashing in his mind. Crayon trucks. Stick figure him, a decade of thanks. He pulled Trey's card from his wallet. Its edges soft as tissue now. Wouldn't be here without you either, he said, voice rough. Trey grinned, clapping his back. Guess we're stuck with each other. Isaiah stepped outside, the snow falling soft. The shop's lights a beacon in the dark. 10 years ago, he'd made a choice, a gut call in a storm. Now one surname. It was a dynasty, a promise kept, a haven that would outlast him. He exhaled, the cold, sharp, and clean, and felt it. Him. A peace, not the end. Innerworm. Unharming, but a beginning, one he'd fight for, fix for, live for. As long as the road stretched on, the 11th year crept up quiet. A milestone Isaiah hadn't seen coming. Jackson's Auto Haven stood tall, its edges weathered but its heart unbroken. A monument to a decade of grit and grace. The apex fight had left scars, faded now, but etched into the shop's story like battle lines on a map. The chain was a ghost, its stores shuttered, its name a cautionary tale whispered in mechanic circles. Isaiah's reputation had hardened into something untouchable, a shield forged in fire, and the shop thrived, bays full, foundation soaring, a steady hum of life that pulsed through Birmingham and beyond. Coleman Automotive had gone national, 100 centers strong, each one carrying a piece of Isaiah's soul. But for all the growth, he stayed rooted, a man who'd rather hold a wrench than a microphone, who'd rather fix a stranger's car than chase a headline. The 10th Thanksgiving had set the tone for what came next, a rhythm of purpose, a promise kept. The 11th was no different, the shop glowing under a crisp November sky, snow dusting the lot like powdered sugar. The doors swung open at dawn. The crew ready? The tradition a beacon for the lost and the broken down. Tasha rolled in with her kids, teenagers now, towering over her, and a spread that could feed an army. Turkey, yes, supermartimons. Collards, cornbread stacked high, the foundation teens pitched in, their hands steady from years of Isaiah's teaching, their laughter mingling with the clank of tools. Stranded drivers trickled in, a nurse with a flat tire, a family whose radiator burst, an old man whose truck coughed its last mile. Isaiah moved through it all, a quiet giant, sleeves rolled, grease streaking his arms, his voice a low anchor in the chaos. We'll get you going, he'd say, and they believed him. Because he always did. The night stretched long, the storm outside softening into a gentle fall. The shop was a warm bubble, plates clattering, stories swapping, the smell of coffee cutting through the oil. Renee and Kayla showed up, their sedan a fixture now, bringing pies and a fierce loyalty that hadn't dimmed. Darren came too, his kids grown, his handshake firm with a gratitude that never faded. The trucker from year 9, now a regular restaurant, hauled in a crate of sodas, grinning. Can't miss this, he said, and Isaiah clapped his back, the patchwork family swelling around him. Trey slipped in late, his presence a steady hum, watching it all with that knowing grin. 11 years, he said, leaning against a bay door. You ever think it'd get this big? Isaiah wiped his hands, glancing at the bustling shop. Never thought past keeping the lights on. Ahidsorninonom, he admitted, voice rough. Trey chuckled. Good thing I did. As midnight loomed, a final car limped in, a rusted hatchback, its engine wheezing. A young woman climbed out, barely 20, her face tight with panic. A baby wailed in the back seat, bundled in a blanket too thin for the cold. Please, Surrenton, she said, her voice breaking. I'm trying to get to my mom. She's sick, and I don't have anyone else. Isaiah's chest clenched, the echo of every desperate plea he'd ever heard ringing in his ears. He nodded. Already moving. Bring the little one inside. We'll fix this. She hesitated, then scooped up the baby, a girl, maybe 6 months, her cries softening as Jamal handed over a bottle from the stash they kept for nights like this. Isaiah dove into the car. The problem clear. A seized fuel pump. A quick swap if he pushed. His hands moved fast. The years of muscle memory guiding him, the weight of her story driving him harder. The repair was done in under an hour, the hatchback rumbling back to life. He waved her over, wiping sweat from his brow. Shuri, she's good. Get to your mom. Her eyes welled up, her voice a whisper. How much? He shook his head. The words a reflex now. No charge. Just go. She stared, then threw her arms around him, the baby squirming between them. Thank you, she sobbed, pulling back with a shaky smile. I'll never forget this, he nodded, throat tight, and watched her drive off. the snow swallowing her taillights. The shop fell quiet, the last of the crowd thinning, and Isaiah sank onto a stool, exhaustion settling into his bones like an old friend. Trey stepped up, hands in his pockets, his gaze steady. "You're still at it, same as that first night." Isaiah pulled the worn card from his wallet, barely legible now, a relic of a choice that changed everything. "Guess I am," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Trey nodded, looking out at the shop, the base silent, the waiting area littered with empty plates, the wall of crayon drawings a testament to a decade of kindness. "This is it, man, cistern. What you built, it's bigger than us now." Isaiah followed his gaze, the weight of it sinking in, not heavy, but full layer wasn't never an like a promise fulfilled. "Yinastri, he said, voice low. "It is." The next morning, he woke early, the cabin still his refuge. He drove to the shop slow, the snow crunching under his tires, the city waking around him. The lot was empty, the sign gleaming in the dawn, Jackson's Auto Haven. A Coleman partner. He unlocked the doors, the heater kicking on, and stepped into his office. The drawing wall caught his eye, dozens now. Trucks and stick figure him, hearts and scrawled thanks from kids he'd never forget. He pinned the latest one up, the baby's mom's shaky handwriting. "To the man who saved us." Next to it, his dad's photo grinned back. Proud and timeless, Isaiah stood there, the quiet wrapping around him, and felt it, closure, not an end, but a handoff. He called Carlos in, handed over more keys. "You're running the day-to-day," he said, voice firm. "I'm stepping back, not out. Just back." Carlos nodded, a grin breaking through. "Got it, boss. We'll keep it right." Isaiah clapped his shoulder, then called Trey. "Need you to find me a new project, something big, something for the kids." Trey laughed at your way on. The sound warmed through the phone. "Already on it. Rest first, though." Isaiah smirked. "Soon, West of Wanchon." That spring, he broke ground on a New Haven Hand Center, 50 acres, a training hub for 1,000 kids a year, funded by Coleman and every dollar he could scrape. He worked the site himself, boots in the dirt, teaching the first class under a half-built roof. Tasha's kids joined, wrench in hand, and she watched. Tears in her eyes. "Dad'd be proud. Say you're son," she said. He nodded, the lump in his throat too big to speak past. The center opened a year later, a sprawling testament to second chances, and Isaiah stood at the ribbon cutting, Trey at his side, the crowd roaring. "This is yours," Trey said, voice low. "Un master a commission." Isaiah shook his head. "Ours." The 12th Thanksgiving. He didn't work the bays. He stood outside, snow falling soft, watching the crew, Carlos leading, the foundation kids shining, the shop alive without him hovering. A new stranded driver rolled in, and the team swarmed, seamless. Isaiah smiled, hands in his pockets, the cold sharp but welcome. He'd built this, not just a shop, but a heartbeat, a legacy that'd outlast him, carried by every hand he'd lifted, every life he'd touched. He pulled Trey's card one last time, its ink gone, and let it drift into the wind. A final release. Back at the cabin that night, he sat by the fire, a beer in hand, the quiet a gift. The phone buzzed. "Tasha, checking in. You good?" she asked. He looked out at the snow, the glow of a life well lived warming his bones. "Yeah, one sir," he said, voice steady. "I'm good." And for the first time in 12 years, he meant it at it. Jackson's Auto Haven would roll on, a haven forever, because Isaiah Jackson had answered a call and kept answering, until the road was his no more.